Hey guys, another week, another game dev vlog, and this week I have again made decent progress on Everybody Edits Universe. Obviously some things don't always go according to plan, but I have made decent headway. So the stuff that I have gotten done has been to do with vector graphic rendering. First off, I did realize in talking with Luke that I was approaching the concept slightly incorrectly. Essentially what I was trying to do was to merge all of the vector graphic images for blocks into one individual SVG that would then be separated by the client loading it. And that's traditionally how you would do stuff on the web. You want to make sure everything's in one file if at all possible. But on the modern web, that doesn't really matter as much, and actually it can sometimes be detrimental, especially since you can't cache certain parts of the files, like specific block types that won't be changing all that frequently whenever there's updates and all that. So it makes a lot more sense to just keep them separate, at least for now, unless we realize that there's some downside to doing it this way. But it seems to be working pretty well right now. It definitely removes some of the problems that I was running into. Basically, I started off with just getting the graphics in as basic vector graphics as separate images this time, modifying the rendering to be able to process different sizes, especially when you change scales, like going in full screen and such, as well as generating block shadows, because previously those were not generated. I've also done some improvements to some of the stuff with minimap scaling when you go in full screen, just to make sure it stays at the right size on pixel and doesn't get blurry and all that. So other than that, the next thing that I moved on to was adding usernames. And that's definitely very useful even during this alpha testing period, because now we can actually tell who's who. And I've got it doing some basic rendering right now. It's not currently pre-baking them onto a bitmap and drawing from that later, like it really should be doing, especially once we want to get doing shadows. So I do have where they disappear if you move too fast, and then they reappear after a certain amount of time once you stop moving, all that kind of stuff. And I also have a login screen where you can enter in the name and join the world. So overall, it went pretty well, went pretty quick. And then the next thing I was working on was starting to implement the actual user interface. Previously, I'd done some concept tests with that. I think I mentioned that in one of the previous vlogs, but this time around I was actually implementing it in the real game. And so far I've got buttons for the minimap and going in full screen, and I've started on the stuff to do with the chat. Definitely making some decent progress. Definitely a long ways left to go with a lot of it, but we're getting there. I know Luke is still making progress on the physics stuff. I mean, he's probably working on it right now as we speak, so yeah, hopefully has some visible results by the end of this next week. But obviously, even if not, we'll have some other stuff that we'll be playing around with that I'll be working on over the rest of this week. Probably to do with, well, adding the chat and other things like that. Oh, and I guess one thing that I forgot to mention was I added the block selector, or a primitive version of it, that is in the center of the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. So I need to also look into a couple of bugs that I've noticed. Nothing too huge, but there are definitely a few things I need to look into. So anyway, I guess that is going to have to be it for today. So as always, I do want to thank my contributors over on Patreon. It is definitely a massive help. If you want to check out my Patreon page for yourself, the link is down in the description below. And of course, I want to thank the Everybody Edits patrons as well. So yeah, I'll see you around. Goodbye.